Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Stories from the River. My name is Carl Hillesland, and today's episode is our fourth installment from the Global Leadership Summit. We're going to be talking about Juliet Funt's leadership gluttony talk that she did. Phenomenal. We got some amazing things here for you. But before we get started, I want to introduce Kellie Jones here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, how long you've been at the river, what you do for us at the river, and we're going to jump into a great session from Juliet Funt on leadership gluttony.
My name's Kellie Jones. I am the Senior Manager of Retail Operations for our company, and I have been here just a little over 9 years now.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail.
Kellie, thanks so much for joining me. I know we had a great time, and for all of our listeners, today we're going to be talking about how leaders overload themselves and their teams, right? So Juliet Funt calls it leadership gluttony, and I got to tell you, this buffet style approach to leadership, where more always feels better, is something that was unbelievable in how she unpacked it. But in reality, all we get is lots of thrust and no vector. Energy everywhere, but no direction. So we're going to explore in her talk why that happens, what the alternative looks like in her reductive mindset, which was something that really stood out to Kellie and I, and then share some tools and stories that show how less really does lead to more. So think of today in three parts: the problem, the alternate, and the tool set. So if you're ready, let's jump into the problem, right? So leadership gluttony. Juliet, by the way, I was just kind of blown away by this, Kellie. Like when she read off her, I think I was listening to another podcast when she was on with Craig Rochelle, and Craig read her intro, and I literally think it was named like every single company that's existed in the top Fortune 50, right? She's worked for Nike. I'm not even going to go through all the ones, but she's worked for almost every single organization, and so there was a lot of credibility there. That really stood out to me. And she talks about leadership gluttony, that leaders treat work like a buffet. They pile high their plates with projects, initiatives, and goals, and they're thinking more that equals progress when their plate is so full. But in reality, it spreads effort so thin, it's how you said it, rips the bread. So why don't you talk a little bit about how that's what stood out to you about leadership gluttony, Kellie?
Yeah, so one of the things that she mentioned, or how I took it anyway, is, as a leader, you've got all these projects currently happening, and, we've got our hands in a lot of different pies, but then the world's changing, things are happening. And then you're like, oh, now we need to, we got to get involved in this. We got to add this. Oh, we've got to do this. So it's like, you're just keep adding on. And then the phrase that she said that you just mentioned, that if you spread the peanut butter too thin, you're going to tear the bread, because you can't be involved in everything. You're one person, you have a limited amount of time and effort that you can put into something. So if you're spreading yourself too thin, or your team too thin, you're just not going to be able to get anything done ultimately, because there's just too much. So, yeah. And that's kind of how I took it and put it into my practical terms.
When you're juggling 12 different balls, our competitor is perfectly throwing one. And yes. So to stay relevant, we've got to understand how to reduce that. Like, we can't just keep piling more on. I love, she opened up with the Blue Angels. Remember that? And yes, she showed a clip from their prep session. And really, you saw how intense and focused they were. That precision only comes when distractions are stripped away. They had the scene from the Blue Angels. You remember it? Like, where all the pilots, and if you don't know, for our listeners, if you're unfamiliar with the Blue Angels, these are the guys that are flying at, 700 miles an hour, like 18 inches apart. Like, it's just crazy, right? So anyways, they show this room with all the pilots, and they're going through their whole performance, right? How they do their loops and turns and all that kind of stuff, but they're sitting in a chair, and you can see them. I don't know if you can see my arms right here, but they're in unison as one, single focus, and it's just so amazing what can happen with when there's less is more, right? When they're not juggling 12 different things, they're focusing on one thing, and they're having incredible success. So Kellie, I kind of want to ask you this question, because in your role, you have a million different things that flow into retail operations, right? So have you ever been part of a team where leaders kept adding priorities without letting anything go. They just kept piling on, piling on, piling on. It was almost a log jam. And you knew you had to get some of this other stuff done first. Have you ever been part of a team where that happened? And what was the scenario? And walk us through how you led us through that.
Yeah. So I've been on several different teams and calls where just everybody has an idea. They're like, hey, I think this would be a great thing to do. This would be a great thing to do. Let's do all these different things to whatever whatever the solution we're trying to find, solve for. It's very hard to differentiate, be like, okay, so we all have different priorities. How do we focus that? So that's kind of what when I'm in those situations, like, okay, what's the priority? Like, what is the ultimate goal and what is really going to get us there that we can all focus on is what I've tried to do in the past. But I'm also, part of the problem sometimes. I have my ideas and, just like everybody else, we all want our ideas to be the one that we go with. So it's hard for us to let go of different ideas. And then there's a little bit of bitterness that could happen. Like, oh, they went with that person's idea too. So that's, a problem that happens from time to time in these situations that we have to deal with. Cause it's hard.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people that have care a lot. So they have a lot of these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's already work to be done, and we keep adding on more thinking that, hey, that'll solve it, or only take 5 minutes to do this or that. But if gluttony is the problem, as she says, piling on more, which is how she describes that, what's the alternative? And that's really where she starts unpacking the reductive mindset. And I've really always appreciated that about you. And working with you is you're always looking to prioritize. And, for us on the retail side, on the sales side of things, listen, we're every single day, we're chasing a number, right? And so we know at the end of the day, if we were successful or not. But, if we keep changing that every 6 months or every 90 days on how we go and do our sales process, well, then we're never going to be able to actually move the needle. And that's what she talks about with all thrust and no vector. We just got energy going everywhere. It's kind of like the sun. It's billions and billions of kilowatts of energy. And the worst thing that can kind of happen is a little bit of sunburn. But when you take that sun and focus it in on like a little needle, right? It's a laser and it can cut through steel. So it's a little bit about that focus, or a lot about the focus there.
Yeah.
So the alternate is a reductive mindset. And she says that progress doesn't come from adding more, but from stripping away what doesn't matter. So like, I know you love that. I think I even remember looking over and you were like, oh yeah, like kind of writing notes there. What stood out about the reductive mindset to you? And really, I just want to frame this up for our audience. Juliet talked about 3 options. There's the prioritization. And Kelly, you already alluded to that, but it's putting the rocks in the right order, right? If you look at this big pile of rocks, all of these things that we've got to get done, are the rocks in the right order of sequentially of how we do it. Then she talked about improvement, making the rock pile better, instead of it just being all disconstrued, like making it better, making it more productive. And then number 3, reduction, making the pile smaller. So there was really those 3 options that she gave. But Kelly, kind of talk to us through that lens of what stood out for you for the reductive mindset.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that stood out for me is that, it's hard. We don't think reductively, like in any aspect of our lives. Like, I always think of when I travel, I'm always like, ooh, more souvenirs, more, like that. Or, going to eat, like she talks about the buffet. We're all like, I'll just get a little bit extra. Ooh, desserts. I'll get one of these, like stuff like that. That's how our minds think. It's not about reducing and just getting rid of stuff. Typically, some people do. Some people are really good at that kind of stuff. Not me. Obviously, you can see lots of books. And that's just one shelf. So
that's right.
So that's not how we think. And so that was one of the big things there, is like changing our mindsets, and just how we think and we do, because we will ultimately be more productive and reach our goals if we do focus as a team. She said the 3 F's: focus, focus, focus. So just really focusing in on 1 or 2 of those priorities or whatever it is to reach that goal. And, and having that intense focus will help get us there, instead of all the other things.
From the prioritization standpoint, I think too, I've always thought about like the Eisenhower matrix, right? Like urgent and important. But, from a prioritization, but when she talks about improvement, she talked about the SpaceX mantra, right? Like what can we remove? And man, I don't know if we can put up a picture of the 3 engines that SpaceX has gone through, but you can see each improvement actually they reduced and it even looked even cooler, right? So like reduction creates beauty, it's simplicity and power. And then she also talked about like the IKEA effect, right? And if you're, I know we're in furniture, so it's I don't necessarily want to talk about, another furniture, but the idea that IKEA has is that they believe that when people cling to what they have built, even if it's a waste, right? Even if this furniture's falling apart, like they're still going to hold on to it longer because they did something. They were part of putting it together.
Yes.
And then I remember her talking about, I think it was her grandparents that, or great grandparents that had all their money in gold bars and they had to flee their country. And in order to survive, they had to drop gold. Right? And dropping gold means sometimes you must cut out the good things to pursue great ones. And I remember writing this down. I highlight it. And she said, "We are not infinite, but the work is."
Yeah.
So Kellie, like, how do you balance that? Like, how do you think leaders, why do you think leaders struggle to cut instead of add?
We're invested. We own certain aspects and we want to see that go, through fruition, even though it could be that good idea and not that great idea. So, but we still own it. We still love it. We still want to. So that's part of it. And then, we want the world with it changing and everything happening. We want to be up on the latest things, but so we're going to have what we already working on that we love and we're not going to let it go, but we're going to add more because that's how the world is and things are changing. So we need to add more or new, let's say, and so it's just continuing to just compound on us at that point. So, and that's just who we are. That's just human nature.
When I think about this dropping gold, and I think about our organization, right? And I think about my organization, Retail Performance. That's the sales aspect of our company. This entire year, we made an agreement that we said we're not going to add any new initiatives. We're just going to have the year of focusing on the same exact thing. Stacy, our head coach, had a great soundtrack for us on that. And over this year, even though there's 3 main things we're focused on, I got to tell you, we have improved, but we have not even accomplished those 3 things because, we're learning how to stick and stay, right? And so cutting matters, cutting out the priorities. But how do we actually do it? Well, we've got to stay focused because, people are prone to drift and all it takes to drift is nothing, which is actually another speaker, but it really lends itself to this concept. And so we've got to, in retail this year, we've focused on 3 main priorities. And by focusing on that, we have made big decisions that have impacted every memory maker on the retail performance organization. And we have absolutely moved the ball forward in these key areas. Now, we've got goals and maybe, our goals are aggressive and we want to get after it. But that focus has helped us achieve more than I believe than what we normally would have when every single 90 days we're looking at our priorities. We said for 1 year, boom, these 3 things, we're getting after it. And it's really made a big difference. So we can really connect with that drop in gold because there's a lot of other great ideas, just like you said. But we took the top 3 and we said, this is going to increase our business the most. We went after it. So one thing, because cutting matters, how do we actually do it? Juliet offers a tool called the Spin Launcher. So, it's a 5-step process for cutting clutter and making space. And listen, her talk was so amazing. It was like equal parts telling stories as like you were in a advanced college course. I mean, it was like this blood, like I was like, I can't even take notes. I got to go back and rewatch this episode time and time again because the Spin Launcher is something that I think, I want to try with my organization. So it's a 5-step process and I'll give you the 5 steps real quick. It's generate, separate, evaluate, eliminate, and liberate, right? So let's unpack those real quick. So generate. The step number 1, she gives everyone sticky notes, right? And she asks the question, I wish we could stop blank. And her whole goal here is just to open the floodgates, to get all the key stakeholders in a room. And when you're talking about your organization, I wish we could stop blank. No one's names, no one's titles. Like it's just anything that they could stop. And it's one idea per sticky note. What did you think about that when you heard that?
I loved it. That was one of the first things I wrote it down. I highlighted it. I put it in a box, like everything. I was like, that is like the perfect question to ask the team because, and I think of it as, as a personal level, we've all as leaders done a start, stop, continue at some point in time, which is kind of similar to that statement. But do we ever do it on our projects? Do we ever do it on the team? Do we ever, as a whole, do we do it? And I would say I've never done that. And so like just the thought of asking that question, like, I wish we could stop. And I would love to and personally, I want to bring it down to all the levels of all that, because, the people that do it every day, like, or the tasks that we assign and all that, like, what do they wish? And I would just love to hear that and to be able to generate new ideas of how to reduce, this, or I don't know, make it more efficient, whatever the case may be. I love efficiency. So anything I can make more efficiency and take it out of their hands, I'd love to do.
So what's really great about that is, think about, like, I thought about being in that room and, having my own ideas and people saying, hey, I wish I could stop that. I'm like, man, that is such great feedback when we have an environment like that where we can, whether you're in the room or not, people can have that open feedback. So then what do you do next? Well, the next one is separate, right? And so she says you take all those sticky notes and you sort into what we can versus cannot control. Right? Yes. What we can and cannot control. And that's a really important distinction too, because, if we're going to go solve something, we've got to obviously solve things we can control. The things we can't control, automatically, boom, they stay over on that list. So once we have the things that we wish we could stop and that we can control, she talks about evaluating is the third step. And it's thinking about the mission, right? The mission proximity, how close is it to the mission? Is it high value or low value work? So she talks about the R's and P's. Did you get captured those notes? Because I think that's a really cool piece of where we can, or a really cool thread that we could pull here. She talks about the 4 R's and the 4 P's of evaluating. What did you get on those?
Yeah. So the 4 R's are going to be those very high value items. So you're going to have revenue. Is this going to contribute to our revenue? Because obviously kind of important. We work in retail. We need to have, we want to keep improving that revenue. Is it going to improve our reputation? Because that's super important in these days. What about our rewards and our readiness? So those are those R's. But then you've got P's on the reverse that are those low value. Is it going to cause panic? Is it going to pander? Are we pandering? Or is it a procedure, or is it padding? So those are the low value items. So we want to focus on the high value and the stuff that's going to help improve those items for everyone.
That's right. Yeah, those 4 R's and 4 P's are gonna help separate the things that we can control into how close is it to the mission to get us to where we need to be. And this year it's 272. That's where we're headed this year, and we're well on our way. And so she talks about number 4, eliminate. So we need to cross a line from talking about it to action. And that's where, she says, I propose that, and fill in the blank, we start going this direction. So we're actually forcing people into action through this. And it could feel like, oh my gosh, I got to let go of the vine. I got to delegate. We got to cut some of this stuff, because this is where we separate good from great there. Did you have anything there on eliminate, crossing line from talking into action?
Yeah, so that just reminds me of something that Stacey McCormick always says, there's power in doing. So just do it. Like, okay, we talked about it. Now it's time to do it. We got to put it into action. And that's what I just took from it. It's just like, stop talking, do it.
Yeah, and I love to, I know my brain went like, oh my goodness, we're going to cut. But she did this thing, think about it as a haircut, not plastic surgery. Right? Like, cutting isn't loss, it's freedom. And that's really that 5th step is liberate, is to experience the freedom that we have to say no to all this other stuff, and that we're going to be, over indexing on these certain things. And so a couple of illustrations she used was like tuna versus krill, right?
Yes.
Tuna being this big fish in the sea versus krill, these tiny, small crustaceans, like big, bold cuts versus small trims, right? And so she said, focus on the small trims. They add up, right? She talked about subtask reduction, not cutting projects, but just trimming approvals and reports. And like, do we really need all the red tape on certain things? And again, I love that haircut metaphor, because waste grows back. You got to trim it again, right? Creep kind of comes in there. So, Kellie, I loved it because she said sometimes 5 minutes of white space gives 5 hours of wasted work. And what I love about that is she says, even your calendar, like, don't schedule meetings for 60 minutes, schedule them for 50 or 55 minutes, 20, 30 minutes meetings. Why not 25? Create those 5 minutes of white spaces, and it's going to save 5 hours of wasted work, just time where we're in meetings, and we can give time back. If you do that every single day, you might be able to cut out an hour a day of just white space where the brain needs time to refuel, and it's still categorizing what that previous meeting was. But a lot of times our meetings go, 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, maybe some of us got 11 to 11:30 lunch break. Like, what's that, right? Like, nobody, did people even take those? She's encouraging us to get back to that kind of practice. So do you like the tuna cuts, the big, bold changes, or the krill cuts, the small trims that add up?
I like the krill cuts. I like the small reductions because that just helps in the end, because I do feel like, for instance, I feel like we do need to have a monthly call with the REMs, but what can we cut out of that to make it a little bit more efficient, a little bit more, here's what you need to know, here's like what we're doing, those kind of things. So it's important to necessarily, some of the call, but maybe we can trim something else, from it, or give, or if we need the whole time because of whatever, maybe there's something else that we can trim and make more efficient. Like I said, I love efficiency. So like, where can we adjust? What can we get rid of? What can we, do there? Just like smaller things.
I love it. And listen, when leaders can reduce the pile, they give their teams lift, right? There's less drag, more focus. That's how you go supersonic, right?
Yeah.
And so Juliet's message is simple: shrink the pile, take back the focus, and go supersonic. And whether it's fighting leadership gluttony, or adopting a reductive mindset, or using tools like the spin launcher, the time wedge in your calendar, or even the year of no new things, it's all about creating room. So when we reduce, we liberate people to do their highest value work, and that's how you trade drag for lift. And so, Kellie, any other final closing thoughts here before we conclude?
I think that's pretty much it. She was a fantastic speaker. I loved every minute of it. It was one of those moments where I was like, I couldn't write fast enough to be able to take this back to my team and share it with, now with the world. So, but yes, with my team specifically, so.
Well, Kellie Jones, thanks for joining me on this episode, Stories from the River, talking about the Global Leadership Summit and Juliet Funt's Leadership Gluttony. I'm going to tell you something. Stay tuned, listeners. We have more episodes coming on the Global Leadership Summit series. Stay tuned.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. To watch this episode, go to youtube.com/@storiesfromtheriver. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.